So like I mentioned just a few minutes ago, I love cleaning out closets. And I think I got that love probably from my mom and my grandma, who marked the beginning of every spring and every fall by cleaning out their closets and having a big family yard sale, a very joyful celebration and marking of the seasons. So imagine my delight when I came to Troop and discovered that this gorgeous building that we share is full of closets. Full of closets. Now, if I counted correctly, we have 9 legitimate closets. We have 1 projection booth used as a closet. We have not 1, not 2, but 3 basements used as a closet. And we also have Troop Tower, which if any of us could get up those rickety stairs, we might want to use as a closet. So we have found some strange and terrifying and wonderful things in these closets. Some of them is a conversation for later. I would not want it to be caught on video and on YouTube. Maybe one of the weirdest things we found was a coffin. Yeah, and we think it was used for a haunted house here at some time, but we can't really verify that. Mysteries of the building. And so in one of the closets upstairs, it holds our Troop archives. And until a few months ago, it was a real room of all a jumble, hard, almost impossible to actually get to the very back of the room until Andy and Garrett, who's sitting near the back, and Sarah rolled up their sleeves and went into the closet and started making sense out of what some of the things were in it. Some of the items that they have found are up here on our altar. There is a Bible that is 150 years old. And it was actually given to the church by a couple in honor of the couple's 50th wedding anniversary back in the 20s. There is in the middle of the back altar, which I know is a little bit hard to see in the back, there's an old symbol of universalism, which is a cross just to the left of center, signifying our leftness, progressiveness, and also our idea that there is lots of room for other beliefs and ideas in our church. There's a box up here of letters from the Universalist Women's Association, and this is one box of many up in the archive room from these women and their activities and what was important to them. And we also found a box of old hymnals that were put together, created by First Unitarian Church Los Angeles. And it's a book of hymns that lift up all of our social justice ideas. And these 3 hymnals on the altar, they all have a little place card in it that says these were given as a gift by John and Ann Honeywell, who are longtime members of the congregation. So there's a lot of material up in this room, and Garrett and Andy and Sarah have plans to occasionally bring some of it down and have a display of it in coffee hour so you can touch it and put your hands on it and see what used to happen around here back in the day. And like each of us ask about the closets that we have at home, as Sarah and Andy and Garrett and other leaders are going through this archive room, we're asking ourselves the same types of questions that we ask ourselves about our closets at home. Is this particular piece of relic, does it still make sense for us to keep it in 2018? Does it help tell the story of Troop and Universalism and Unitarian Universalism? Is it something that if we let it go, the fullness of our story can still be told by other items that are here in the archive room? We wonder, are these things essential to our Troop values? And is it really integral to who we are today? And so even if they are items that we will always keep tucked away in that closet, kind of similarly to my 3 items that I'm going to keep tucked away in my closet at home, we wonder whether or not it's something that we just need to have in there for future generations to look at and wonder about and appreciate. So this question of what to keep and what to let go of in religious thought, it's not a new idea. In fact, this very question has been alive in American Unitarianism since our very inception in the early 19th century. And it's this question that actually helped further define American Unitarianism in 1941, when a Unitarian minister, Theodore Parker, in 1841, wrote a groundbreaking sermon, and in it he pondered what is the permanent and the transient in Christianity. And Parker was writing this from his standpoint of a liberal Christian Unitarian minister. This is considered one of the seminal sermons that really helped shape and define Unitarianism as a separate faith and denomination, separate from Christianity back then. And what did he write that was the cause? It was actually a lot of derision and attack, and it was a big uproar in Boston when the contents of this sermon were heard and talked about. When we hear what he wrote about now, I don't think for any of us it really seems so startling. We're probably not going to type it into our news feed on Facebook as like late breaking news. The heart of his sermon insisted that personal religious impulse is actually a very primary and universal feeling. And he said, you don't have to be a Christian in order to experience this or feel it. He said that people from all faith traditions can feel it, and that Christianity is just one expression of it, leaving so much room for other people, other faiths. He wrote that the authority in Christianity comes not from creeds or doctrines or confessions of faith, all things that are particular to a time and context of a faith community, all things that are crafted by human mind and human hands, that those things are really transient, but that the authority in Christianity comes from this congruity with universal truths as read about and understood in his understanding by the acts and message of Jesus. So from that sermon, in Parker's own words, he wrote, "For it's not so much by the Christ who lived so blameless and beautiful 18 centuries ago that we are saved directly, but by the Christ we form in our hearts and live out in our daily life. It's by that we save ourselves, God working with us both to will and to do. God, send us a real religious life which shall pluck blindness out of the heart, make us better fathers, mothers, and children, a religious life that shall go with us where we go and make every home a house of God, every act acceptable as prayer." So as you hear those words, how much of those ideas do you experience as being carried through in Unitarian Universalism today? A lot of it sounds familiar. And I wonder how much of what he said, putting it into your own words and own context, how much of that is true and how you try to live out your own lives today. Those of you that I know and hear talk about your lives, I would say much of that you carry in your own heart. So I love liturgy and worship, and as our archivists make their way through the mounds of dusty binders and folders, my own hands, of course, reached for the oldest set of orders of service I could find. Right here. The way we shape our worship services is called the liturgy. That's what you see in that order of service in front of you. And from the Greek, it means only the work of the people. And so by looking at our order of service today, or at the ones collected in here, you can see what was important religiously in the hearts and minds of the people who had gathered. So these are from 1958, the oldest ones I could find, with a flourish. Perfect, thank you. So 60 years old. And there's some elements of worship that they did in 1958 that we no longer do. One of them I had to look up on Wikipedia and even find out what it is. I'm slightly embarrassed to say, but they sang a Sanctus every morning, which is a liturgical sung prayer. I'm looking at DJ to get affirmation on this. And often the Sanctus starts with the words, "Holy, holy, holy, God of our creation." The opening hymn we sang is actually the same tune as "Holy, holy, holy, author of creation," that is in our hymnal. And they had a monthly unison prayer that they said in unison, standing, and the prayer changed each month, but it was the same words for the entire month. There was a sung doxology, and I did not find a chalice lighting anywhere. Even with the elements that we carry forward from these orders of service today, things like hymns, a responsive reading, a lesson or story for all ages, a sermon, even as I look through those familiar elements, the wording's just a little bit off. Because we see repeated over and over words and language that's very gendered. So there is a lot of mankind and man, God referred to as he only. Clearly, the women's movement had not moved in yet. But you can pick up on core parts of our shared faith that were lifted up in Parker's sermon in 1841. Things like the divine in each one of our hearts, living out our values in our everyday lives, and that these acts of love out in the world are the most important prayer we can say. On December 14th, 1958, the order of service made a very clear theological claim. Hospitality is the heart of our faith. All are welcome. Through the worship elements, you can easily see that beliefs transcend from Parker's time into 1950s universalism. And these themes show up in the next hymn we're going to sing, "Where is Our Holy Church?" It was written by a Unitarian minister who is also a co-signer of the Humanist Manifesto, and you can trace the strands of what we hold important in our faith. These ideas like the sacred resides in each of us, the importance of living our beliefs in the world, and the power of the church is not in its creeds, but in our relationships and in our interactions with one another. So we sing together, "Where is Our Holy Church?" Number 113, and you can remain seated as we sing.